Welcome to TrustTalk. In this episode, we dive into the journey of Carine de Meyere, founder and president of Women of the World, and her ambitious goal to empower 1 million women and girls by 2030. She shares how trust is the foundation of her mission, building global connections and fostering a sense of sisterhood across continents. Carine discusses the challenges women face in securing trust in male-dominated fields and the transformative power of mentorship and female leadership. Tune in to hear how Carine's work is creating a global sisterhood, aiming for a future where every woman's potential is recognized and nurtured. Your host today, Severin DeWitt.
Carine, great to have you on our show. Welcome. First of all, I would like to ask what brought you to start Women of the World, of which you are the founder and president?
So Women of the World is basically the result of my life. And very often when I have young women, when I meet them at a conference or they email me or they send me a message through LinkedIn, they're like, oh, I want to be part of your Women of the World. And I'm like, you are a woman of the world already. I'm just there. I have created a global network of ambassadors in various countries, which can help you grow your business, can help you raise capital for the entrepreneurial innovation that you have, but can also make you feel that you are part of a global sisterhood. Because I really think this is something that the Western world is lacking, and that's the sense of sisterhood. I was actually launched in 2011, and then in 2015, I was part of the global launch of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so alongside that, with number 5 is gender equality, I said, okay, by 2030, I want to be able to empower 1 million women and girls. And that's what we're heading for. And I must say, I was just nominated in Paris during the big Change Now Climate Solutions Conference as one of the 25 global women as a role model. And there were 35,000 people there. And these are the kind of ways that I try to empower young women, by being on those platforms and connecting with them.
In that mission that you mentioned, to empower 1 million women and girls through Women of the World by 2030, how have you seen trust play a role in fostering connections, collaborations, and the overall growth of the platform?
Well, as I said to you in a previous talk, there's a beautiful saying, you can tell people things and then they may remember, you can show people things, then they may forget it. But if you make people feel about certain things and you bring them along on your journey, then they will remember that. And so by organizing these female leadership study trips, and I've been organizing those since 2018-19, first to Silicon Valley, because I wanted to empower women in the Western world about the future of technology. And then during the pandemic, I used to take them to the Middle East because I saw a sense of sisterhood in the Middle East that I also thought could be very beneficial to women. And during these leadership trips, women became a tribe, and that's now growing. And the sense of trust and sisterhood that I'm hearing that these women are feeling, that's, I think, is my natural forte.
Could we discuss the importance of having a mentor, a guide, or an advisor for women's career growth? How important is trust in this guidance relationship, especially for women aiming for higher professional positions?
Well, it's interesting. During one of those female leadership trips, we visited LinkedIn, the head office. And the head of diversity and inclusion gave a presentation, and she literally said what it takes for a man to go through his career. And a man had until age 40 to literally show to a company if he was partner worthy. A woman only had until age 30 because of the childbearing, of course, and everything. So women really need to work very hard in their 20s if they're working in a big organization. They also were saying that they had now actually appointed mentors and sponsors for women because they had showed that when a man was applying for a job, even if he only fit 3 of the 10 prerequisites, he would just apply because he would think that he would learn the other 7 things along the way. Women, on the other hand, were taking very much longer to apply because they wanted to make sure that they fit all the 10 descriptions. And so what these mentors were focusing on was to actually make these women combat their imposter syndrome, because that's really something that a lot of women have deep down inside. And so we are our worst enemy in that sense. And I think by having a mentor and a sponsor and a champion, you can really take away all that insecurities.
I think you already mentioned some, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the most significant challenges women face when trying to build or maintain trust in environments that are traditionally dominated by men. And how can these challenges be overcome?
Well, first, I always say to women, accept that you're a woman. Accept that you have certain innate feminine leadership qualities, which can actually be very beneficial. My biggest setback was when I came back from the United States, because as I mentioned, I was educated at a women's college. I came back to Europe and I saw the women who were really going for the top, they were behaving like men. And I found it, first of all, very hurtful, because they were literally denying their own sexuality in a way, but they were also playing games which were not beneficial to support other women. And I very often, I always said this at my TED Women when I was closing the event, I always said to women, if you were offered an opportunity to step into a board or to a higher position, leave the door open for another woman, because you are also standing on other women's shoulders. Some women tend to forget that.
Yeah. Can you share strategies or practices that have effectively built trust among women in networks or communities focused on their empowerment?
I must say that I've seen many initiatives now about diversity and inclusion. I think a lot of companies have been focusing on that, and I think that they've also seen that that is very much beneficial to the companies, ABN AMRO, ING, but also Microsoft. You see it in all the industries. I also see what really helps, and I think this is what the Netherlands is very much in need of, having a female CEO or having a female prime minister. I mean, we are still in need of that for the Netherlands. I mean, the fact that childcare is still not being paid for by the government. I'm now going on a trip to Saudi Arabia early May. And there is a Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who says he created a Vision 2030, but he said, I need the women if I want to reach that Vision 2030. So that country is not has no time to create a glass ceiling. Well, the Netherlands, I mean, I still see it happening. Women they think they're going for the top. At Unilever, it just happened. There was a woman, she could have been a great CEO, and then they bring in somebody from outside. It happens all the time.
You are trained as a psychologist, I think, right?
Also. Yeah.
So maybe you're aware of the 2014 study by American social psychologists that found women are less likely than men to lose trust after a betrayal and more likely to regain trust even after multiple letdowns. How do you interpret these findings in the context of women's empowerment and trust dynamics?
Well, I think this is a very general assumption because I do not agree with it. But I think it really differs per person. I know some women who are able to do that. So who are able to, even after betrayal, are able to step over that and then continue. But I also know a lot of women who can hold a grudge against other people, men and women, and that they find it very hard. And then in that sense, feeling deeply, which of course women do often, yeah, I think that could also be working against us. I would like to read this study.
I can imagine. Your educational experiences have undoubtedly shaped your perspective. You mentioned where you have been educated in Women's College, Harvard. Based on those experiences at institutions, like for example Harvard, how do you believe trust dynamics can vary across cultures?
That's interesting because I actually have my 20th year anniversary from Harvard coming up and my 30th anniversary of Wells. And it's interesting, I learned most when I was at Harvard from the other cultures. So we were studying at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and I think in our class we had 90 different nationalities. And as you know, right now, Harvard is very much under fire, as they say, with everything that's happening after the horrible Hamas attack in Israel and in Gaza, and the drama, the total humanitarian drama, what's happening there. And I think if there was any trust, I think it's completely gone right now at these campuses, especially at these Ivy League schools, because of course there's a huge backlash. But I think trust is the most important characteristic of a relationship. And I think it also has to do with unconditional love. I think unconditional love is the only thing that's going to save the planet. Marina Abramovic actually says that as well, the performance artist. And I think because of all the stress that the world is right now, I mean, I have so much respect for all leaders at the moment and decisions they have to make at the moment, because trust is being violated nonstop, all the time. The whole world order is changing. Where you're born, that's the view you have. I was born in Europe. We are connected to America. But now with all the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, I mean, Saudi Arabia, UAE, I mean, there's a completely new world order about to come to the surface. Turkey, it's a very fascinating time, but also very scary. And I think people trust on one hand that country, but then they don't trust the other country. I think it's very difficult. And I think a lot of the wars we're having right now are all like a result of failed diplomacy for years, of wrongly made decisions by governments, the whole weapon industry, which is so beneficial for all the countries and everything. I mean, I wish we would work more on trust, but I don't think there's any time to work on trust, because history is nonstop rewriting itself.
Would the world look better if we would have more female leaders?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I just watched a Netflix documentary. It's called Octopus Murders. I'm watching this, I think it's 5 or 6 episodes. I didn't see one woman in any of the decision making, not one woman. All the mess we're in right now, and of course there have been Golda Meir, you know, I mean, she was a strong woman of Bhutto, or in India, of course, but it's mostly men that make decisions, and it's mostly men that send their countries to war. Women give birth. I don't want my son to end up being killed.
You're preaching to the converted. I have 3 women in my family, my wife and my 2 daughters, so I can fully align with that. You did also a lot of advocacy work, right? So how have you seen trust between women and policymakers affect the success of initiatives or policies aimed at women's empowerment?
One of the organizations that I was very much involved with for many years was Room to Read. And it was an educational NGO founded by John Wood, former Microsoft. And he really saw, when he was in the Far East, that girls were only able to go to school until age 8 in countries like Cambodia or Vietnam or Laos or Nepal or India. And so he really started to focus on raising money for scholarships for girls, and then also being able to work together with the government and to be able to have them go to universities afterwards and then find jobs. And so these advocacy often need to be founded by very dynamic people who are able to connect with the government as well.
We just talked about women and leadership. Trust is, as you said, a critical component of leadership. How do you think trust impacts the ability of women to lead and be accepted as leaders? What steps can be taken to enhance trust in women's leadership abilities, and as a result end up in a world where there will be more women at top positions?
Somebody just asked me who was one of my role models politically, and then I really think one of the really role models is Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister who stepped down last year. And when I ask other people, they often name her as well. And the reason why they mentioned her is because she created this sense of trust. She didn't come across as a liar. And to be quite honest, so many politicians are masters of lying. And I think trust and lying are completely
the opposite. Yeah,
the opposite of each other. So I think you get trust because people feel that you're telling the truth and that you are not trying to beat around the bush, which is what unfortunately a lot of people do in leadership positions in order to maintain where they are, or they are so addicted to their ego. I mean, of course, that's very much what happens to leaders. Unfortunately, I think our own country, we had the result of somebody who has overstayed his welcome as a prime minister, and look at where we are now.
What challenges do women face in areas where trust in them is extremely low? For example, in countries where they have a low expectation of whether women can be true leaders. And how can these issues be addressed to improve their situation?
I must say that in Europe, we are having more and more women now in political positions. But we in the Netherlands still have not had a female prime minister. And if I look sometimes at the female politicians and I listen to them, I very much have a feeling that they are literally saying what the Prime Minister wants them to say. And sometimes I speak to them off the record, and then they're actually very much more on my page. And that's when I realized, okay, so you're basically publicly saying things that you have to say because of your position, but actually on a personal level, that's not at all something that you would hear by. And I remember last year being in The Hague at the Feminist Future Foreign Policy event, and I was listening to our Minister of Foreign Affairs, and she was saying things that I thought, I do not think that this is what you personally think, but you are now literally just sharing an agenda with us, which is part of the greater Netherlands strategy. And it very much went against my sense of trust.
Yeah, like you said, in Holland we had some giants as female politicians. I think about our political party D66 with Els Borst. She was a true giant. So there are examples of female politicians that could do the job. So it's not that there aren't any women that can do that.
I mean, let's be honest with Sigrid Kaag. She was really one of my heroes. She still is. And I remember after what happened in Kabul in 2021.
Can you tell our listeners what happened? Because we also have a lot of listeners in Australia and the US. What happened?
15th of August 2021, when Kabul fell to the Taliban, she was Minister of Foreign Affairs. And she, of course, we will never know exactly because we didn't really have all the emails and everything. But of course, that's where you saw the alliance with the Netherlands and then America, and everybody was trying to get their people out of Afghanistan. And apparently the Netherlands was not able to get everyone out right away. And they had been sent emails already before because France actually was able to get people out much quicker because they were already actually being informed about and they were taking those information serious. They thought that she had not responded quickly enough and everything. And anyway, it led to her having to step down as Minister of Foreign Affairs. But she was being honest. She was not lying. And she said later, when I heard her say on public television, she said, I did not want to be remembered as a politician who was lying. Whereas most politicians do. I also remember her saying to me, she once did the kickoff for one of my female leadership trips to Silicon Valley, and we had just a one-on-one, and then she said, I've been away for 23, 24 years, and she said, I really wanted to come back to the Netherlands, also because I wanted my children to understand what their roots were. But she said, nothing has changed when it comes to female empowerment and gender equality here. She said, women are still not working. She said, when I was standing in front at the schoolplein, as we say, people were still saying to me, oh, you are a bad mother because you're not picking up your children 3 times a week. This was 2018.
Failure and vulnerability are often seen as weaknesses, Carine, yet they can also be powerful tools for building trust and authenticity. How can embracing these aspects empower women and encourage a more trusting and supportive community?
Well, when you say failure and vulnerability are seen as weakness, that's something that a man would say, or that a woman would say who likes to behave as a man. I think showing vulnerability is, one of the strongest characteristics that you can have. It shows that you're human. Nobody's perfect. I always say the ones that are actually trying to show the biggest narcissistic behavior are often the ones that have the most fear to fail. And I have actually seen that having a leader step and say, you know what, I find this extremely difficult, what I have to say to you right now. And it really keeps me up at night or whatever. If you show vulnerability, I think that'll always build trust.
Carine, I always end my interviews with a question about the future. What do you see as the biggest challenges for the next generation, your kids, my daughters, for achieving what you have trying to do in the last couple of years to empower women and girls?
People often ask me, why are you always busy with women and everything? And then I'm like, because if you look at what the world is happening, women's rights are being taken away from them. I mean, look at America. I mean, I was educated there. I remember going to Washington in the 1980s, protesting there. We were actually ahead of America with abortion, with the Dolominas and things like that. Look at where we are right now. May 2022, I was again standing in New York on Union Square, standing there with all the women, and I was again campaigning for that. That happened in one lifetime. And what I'm also worried about is what technology is doing to relationships of people. I think we are losing humanity. I think people are losing the way to really connect with one another. They're hiding behind their screens, coming together, building platforms, building these sisterhoods, what I'm trying to do, seeing women in other countries continuing the work that I'm doing. That makes me a happy girl. I'm glad that there's still these women universities around in the world. It's really unique. I wish there were more of them, because I think when you're in age 18, 22, those are very important years for you. And I think it's wonderful as a woman, and I'm still grateful for my father for sending me to that university in America. I'm very grateful that I was able to become the woman that I am now and to feel strong about that.
It's a fantastic way of concluding our interview, Carine. I was already an admirer of your advocacy work for women. It is even larger now after our conversation. Thank you very much for that. I wish you all the best, good health, and keep on advocating.
Well, thank you, and wonderful that you reached out, especially knowing that you have 2 daughters. I'm doing it also for her. I do not have a daughter, I have a son. But I think maybe because I don't have a daughter, that I feel that everything that I was given, I feel enormous privileged with everything that I've been able to do in my life. And I have actually been able to be, for 3 young women who all have lost their mother at a young age, I have been able to be a substitute mother. And I try to pass on a lot of my wisdom and power onto them.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Trust Talk. We hope that you found the conversation valuable and informative. At Trust Talk, we believe in the power of trust to create positive change in the world. If you believe in our mission, we would greatly appreciate your support. You can help keep Trust Talk going by making a donation on our website at trusttalk.co/donate. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us to continue bringing you thoughtful and engaging podcasts. Thank you for your support and for listening to Trust Talk. We look forward to meeting you again for future episodes.